Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Danielle, we're so excited to talk with you today because you are just a wealth of information. Let's see if I can get through your credentials in one breath.
You're so sweet.
You are a physician's assistant, a master's in counseling psychology, PLN1 nutrition certified, FEMM certified fertility educator, and functional diagnostic nutritional practitioner.
Not finished
That's
with that last one just yet, but almost. Yes.
okay. That's still a mouthful.
Yes.
And so, gosh, we kind of there's so many different things that we could talk to you about, and so it's kind of hard to like hone in on one.
Mhm.
Um, we were thinking of just kind of getting back to our basics
Okay.
and kind of getting an understanding of what is happening in our body. And so I'm wondering if you could, share just a little bit about your background and your experience before we get into that. Sound good?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to keep this brief. So I actually I've always been interested in health and wellness and all of that kind of stuff. Like I kind of came out of the womb with like athleticism. I was an athlete my whole life, mostly softball. I pitched competitively, traveled and in college for softball and played shortstop. And I also I played a lot of positions, but that's neither here nor there. Um, and then I went on to be a personal trainer. I went back, well, before that, I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and then I went on to get my master's. And I was like, I don't think this is it for me. And during that time, I'd been lifting weights since I was 12 years old. So I've been lifting weights a lot longer than a lot of people who will probably listen to this have been on the planet. Um, so I went and did personal training while I was finishing up my master's degree. And I was like, I just don't think this is it for me. Someone introduced me to the idea of a physician assistant. And I was like, oh, I can do more with this. Let's do that. And so I went through and did my physician assistant degree. And I worked in conventional medicine for 8.5 years. Um, I'm really thankful for my education and for my experience in conventional medicine because I do believe that there is a tool in the toolbox for every problem. And I think a lot of people get out of conventional medicine and just want to demonize them like, no, no, it's just band-aids don't fix bullet holes, but they're great for cuts and scrapes, is what I like to say. So, there are a lot of times when I would choose conventional medicine over like a more functional approach or like an integrative approach, which I'm also very well trained in. So in 2019, I would say 2018, I had gone through a stint of like disordered eating. And when I was in the works of getting out of that and just learning about how many calories women needed and this, that, and the third, I started finding people like Carrie Jones and Nicole Jardim and other people who were talking about like Jolene Brighton and, you know, the birth control pill and how it affects our health and our hormones and how much food we really need to eat. And so it really kind of just really catapulted me into that arena. And I was like, this is weird. Like these women are really smart and they seem to make a lot of sense. So like, why wasn't I taught this? So I like to say that I'm a toddler that never grew up and I always continue to ask questions. So, I read Nicole's book and Nicole is a good friend now. And I read Jolene's book and, on and on and on. And I'm like, okay, like all this stuff makes a lot of sense to me. Why aren't women being taught this about their bodies? And so since 2018, I've really full-fledged myself into the more holistic, integrative type space. And I now kind of live in this gray area in the middle where I think that both principles are important. Um, and I use my skills from both ends. So that's kind of a little bit about me and my background.
I love your approach so much because it doesn't have to be this black and white, right and wrong, right? It's a blending of, well, what's the best tool for this situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say that I think that was something that always bugged me about like everything that I was taught is it seems like everything I ever learned was either black or white. And I studied addiction treatment, and it was like there's the one way, the AA and the meetings and the inpatient treatment, like the one approach, and there wasn't much else. And now
Yeah.
that's starting to open up, but the people that are opening it up are people that have been through it, not people that went to school for it. But I love that you kept trying different things, because the alternative was what I did and didn't pick anything. So I would much rather have had all this knowledge behind me with the degrees that I had or whatever I finished. But so I think that's great. But that just ties into what you do and having that holistic approach. And it's really good because that's like what's driving this whole thing that we're putting together is we know there's all this information out there that women aren't getting. We weren't getting it, and we want to make sure it's out there. So whatever we can do to get it, I'm glad that you're a part of it.
Yeah, thanks.
So obviously you know a lot about the female human body. So we're going to talk about that today because I think that maybe some of us don't understand what's going on in our bodies.
Yeah.
And let's see. So, just from the basic level, we're in the series, we're really talking about how we're stressed and the coping mechanisms that we're unhealthy coping mechanisms that we're using to alleviate this stress. So how does stress show up in the body, and how do these coping mechanisms, like let's say over caffeinated alcohol, mindless, just tons of scrolling on Instagram or our phones, or binge eating, sugar, like how are these impacting our bodies?
Yeah, so how stress shows up, I think, depends on when someone is able to recognize that they are stressed, right? So if we think of stress of a continuum of like a level 0 to a level 10, um, what if someone's able and in tune with their body and able to recognize what a level 2 feels like, they might feel like some chest tightness or their breathing changes. For me, my breathing will change, jaws clench, just certain different, butt clenching, traps go up to the ears. Some people grind their teeth at night. The breathing will get more shallow, right? Like the breathing is a big one. And I think a lot of people don't pay attention to their breath as much as we really should. It is literally prana, life force, right? So like I have really gotten into yoga the past couple of years and how important that is. Like our breathing actually like helps deliver nutrients to like our blood flow and deliver nutrients to our body to function to different organs. So whole set aside there, as opposed to the person who is gotten themselves so overstimulated because they were unable to recognize that they were here, right? They were at a 2 out of 10 and they never paid attention to it. Level 5, level 6. Now all of a sudden we're at an 8 or a 9 or a 10 and we're not sleeping. Our periods are screwed up. We're losing our hair. We're not digesting properly. We're constipated. We're having diarrhea. We're skipping periods. We're having heavy periods, painful periods, headaches. So those are some ways that along the continuum that we see stress show up in the body. And then what was the follow-up question to that?
These coping mechanisms that we're using to alleviate the stress, but it's not really allowing us to close the stress cycle.
Yes. So things like caffeine, like I have my coffee here. I'm not against caffeine. I drink mostly half caff because I can't take the full caffeinated stuff anymore. So caffeine, I could spend the whole 30 minutes just talking about caffeine and how it can potentially impact health and cycle, right? So what is caffeine? It's a tool, right? So like it stimulates us. It's literally a stimulant. So it helps us feel awake in the morning. However, I see a lot of women, and I work primarily with mostly 30 to 50-year-old women. I have people on the outliers. I work with men, but 30 to 50-year-old over-functioning type A females because we attract ourselves. So here we are. And they are living off caffeine. They're getting up in the morning. They're paying attention to their kids. They're feeding their kids. They're feeding their husband. They're getting out the door for work. They're doing all of this shit. And their breakfast is coffee. And I'm like, honey, no, this is no. Like this, not breakfast. I had eggs, bacon, apples. Like I had a whole breakfast that went alongside with my half caffeinated coffee. So what this does is then it sets us up for a blood sugar roller coaster, or it can potentially, right? So like I'm not against caffeine, but I want the hygiene with the caffeine, right? So I like to talk about hygiene with sleep hygiene, food hygiene. caffeine hygiene, right? So like, are we eating with breakfast? Are we slamming this first thing when we get up in the morning? Are we grabbing our phone first thing in the morning, right? There's a lot of things that can impact how that caffeine affects us. So then it's noon. We haven't eaten anything. Our blood sugar has been up and down. We feel like we're anxious, but we're actually on a blood sugar roller coaster is what's happening there. And so really the problem is that we're not sleeping. We're not caring for ourselves. We're not taking the downtime. So we need this, right? And again, not against it. It's like birth control. I'm not anti-birth control. I'm pro-informed consent. And this goes from anything from caffeine to mammograms to vaccines to alcohol and everything else. Like, homegirl, I just want you to make an informed choice of what you're doing with your body. That's it. So that is how caffeine can kind of play into that. It's a coping mechanism because we're not taking care of ourselves, right? Most unhealthy coping mechanisms are because we're not caring for ourselves. Alcohol, which I know is like a big thing as to what you guys are doing. I could spend hours talking about how alcohol, and again, like I just went and had an old fashioned on my birthday. Like I'm not anti-alcohol, but you're not going to find me consuming it on a regular basis because I don't care how you spin it, it's a toxin, right? So like, you know, and I have a couple of clients who, I have one girl who she had some issues with alcohol and she just stopped drinking on January 1st. She's one of those people where New Year's resolutions work for her. Great. She hasn't had a drink. I'm noticing when I saw her, I was like, you have more facial expression and inflection in your voice than I've ever seen you have, ever. But you know, we reach for that alcohol because we're stressed. Mommy wine culture. Like there's so many messages coming to us that like, okay, like it's totally fine. It's totally normal to need to reach for that alcohol at the end of the day. And it's like, wait a second, like what's missing in your life? Like this is a maladaptive coping mechanism of is what this is. And so people think, you know, a lot of people are also like, oh, well, I can't sleep without alcohol. Okay, well, you're not actually getting good sleep. You're actually just being knocked unconscious. And those are two completely different things. And especially as women start to, I had Carrie Jones came on my podcast and we talked all about perimenopause and menopause. And if you're in your 40s, you need to go follow Carrie because she's talking about her perimenopause journey and she's giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars of free information on her Instagram account. She's amazing. But in our 40s, what starts to change is it's more difficult for us to process that alcohol. And because of the hormone inflections that we're having, estradiol goes very erratic and progesterone starts to slowly decline along with testosterone starting to slowly decline. So because of these changes, it hits us harder. So especially with my women in my 40s, I'm like, we cannot be drinking every night. We can't. It's literally the reason for your heavy, painful periods, your headaches, your food cravings, your blood glucose being out of control, your cholesterol, like all of these things is literally if you are having more than 2 drinks a month, like your alcohol, like that is, I'm not going to ask you to take a supplement. I'm not going to change anything about your nutrition, your hydrate. You literally need to stop drinking. Period. Your gut problems. I know Andrew Huberman's a hot topic right now, but he did do a really great episode on alcohol that I share with a lot of my clients because he really stuck to the facts. Great information aside from whatever the man is doing in his personal life. God love him with that mental gymnastics. I don't know how anybody could do it. Side note, but yeah, I mean, it's a sterilant. So it screws with your gut microbiome. It completely just, you know, estrogen is detoxified mainly through your liver. Phase 1 and phase 2 of detox goes through the liver. So everything else gets put on hold when we drink, right? Including our estrogen metabolism, our toxins and everything else. The higher our toxin load is, the more it affects our liver. So it's really just like a complete circle of one thing feeding onto another of how alcohol negatively impacts literally every aspect of your health. There is not one part of it that it doesn't touch. Your hunger signals, your cravings, your sleep, your mental health. It screws with your GABA receptors. It forces GABA, which is our chill neurotransmitter. It increases it, and then once it gets to a certain point, glutamate takes off, or glutamine, sorry, and that's our excitatory neurotransmitter, right? So it literally affects everything.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, that's a lot, and it seems like whatever it is, well, alcohol especially, like women are targeted for marketing because they know how much we take on and what we try to do.
Yes.
And we do so much. So it's like, they see that, they see dollar signs like, oh, we got the answer for you. It's the easy, fast, answer. Maybe their heart's in the right place. I'm not going to say they're all like evil or anything, but that marketing is geared towards making us think that this is going to help us. These things, especially alcohol, is going to help us with the stress, and it really only makes things worse.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not helping you in any way. It just really isn't. Like, if you think that it's helping you with your coping, like,
yeah. And don't feel bad. Like, we fell into the same traps thinking that these things were going to help us. Like, it's all around us. So anyone who's watching this or listening to this and is like, you were like marketed to, like,
yes.
heavily, probably before you even thought you were going to ever drink, like when we were
Yes.
little kids. So that's why we want to do this. We want to shed light on that, give people the information, the real information that they should have, because that has to be out there, because everybody's being marketed to for the wrong things.
Yeah. And I mean, women are marketed to in a completely different way than men. Even if you look at the pricing between like razor blades, literally, like what we shave with, the same razors are more expensive for women to buy because they know that they will. So there's a lot of things that are, I mean, this is not my area of expertise, but like that is actually a fact. And I do want to touch on, you're saying like women they're doing it all right. So like, Sarah Godfrey just came out with a book. It's called The Autoimmune Cure. And she's basically talking about how stress overrides, how it creates autoimmune disease. Women are affected at, 70% of autoimmune disease is diagnosed in women. And, this is a me-ism. This is not a Sarah Godfrey thing. I have not read that book. Carrie Jones read that book. She told me it was great. I trust her. When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate is also a good one on the same topic. But women were told that they could have it all, that they could do it all. And so they did. And now they have autoimmune disease, because what happened was they're still doing all the other shit that they did before. They're taking care of the kids. They're taking care of the house. They're literally doing everything. And now they're going to work and being CEOs and running businesses and doing all of the shit on top of everything else. And what is the man doing? He's still just going to work. That's it. And I don't want to like shit on men here, but it's like the majority of the responsibilities in the household with children, with X, Y, or Z, will fall on the woman. That is just the way that it is. They, especially in those first couple of years of life, they are generally speaking the preferred parent. When someone's sick, when they are having a hard time at bedtime, that all falls on mom, right? And now she's still trying to take care of herself, exercise, drink enough water, put food in her pie hole, do all of these things. So women were told they could have it all, and now they do, and they also have autoimmune disease. And I'm not one of those people that think that women are delicate flowers and we need to be babied and all of this. I am not that person. However, I do think there is something to this, and I think that it's a much larger conversation.
No, Danielle, let's solve it. Let's solve it now. No.
Oh my God. It's not even like it was spoken. Like, it's not like our mom sat us down and said, this is how it is for women now. It's like all of a sudden that we just like, it was unspoken rule that, yeah, you can do the work thing now if you want to, but you still have to take care of those responsibilities. Like, nobody sat down and told me that. That's just what the messaging was that I was getting from everyone, that I still, if I couldn't do both well, I was failing.
Yes. Yes.
And where do we turn when we feel like we're failing, when we feel like we're not enough, right? We look for external objects to fill us up, right?
External dopamine, really.
Yeah.
Whatever that source is for people. And it can be different in different scenarios for people too, right? Sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's drugs, sex, shopping, the internet. I mean, all of those things they're all a dopamine hit, right?
Yeah,
so
women do that too sometimes I don't think many of them realize it, but that's another.
Yes.
And we're not trying to vilify men or anything like that. We're just saying that this needs to be talked about, because there needs to be a balance of, women, we're going to take on what we can, but who's looking out for us? We need to look out for ourselves. So
Yeah.
this is just about that awareness so that we can realize that we don't have to try to do it all. And yeah, that's maybe the messaging that we're getting, but we can stand up, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not even, I would say, necessarily intentional on the men's behalf, right? Like my husband he comes home from work and then he cooks dinner and does all the things, right? But I have sick kids right now and they don't want him. They don't want to
No.
sit with him.
Mm-mm.
He tries, but they want me, right? So
I don't even have kids and I know this. I have friends who have kids and I watch it happen, and it's like, I mean, if you're breastfeeding, you're the main source of food for that kid for the first, typically anywhere between like 9 and 18 months is the average, breastfeeding duration. So like, contrary to some current information, men cannot breastfeed. I'm sorry if that's controversial, but I just can't stand for that.
And these men were all brought up with the same cultural ideals as we were. So they were all, it wasn't like they were sat down and spoken to their roles and what they need to expect their women to do. That was just something that kept getting handed down. So, and there's a lot of men that support this idea that women do all of these things and should be getting help. So like I expected my dad, I got raised by a single father. So I had a different situation
Yeah.
of how men operated, but it was still within a traditional family where my grandmother was like, you need to help your dad because he doesn't have help because your mom's gone. And so it still fell on the female, the oldest in the family, to be the nurturer and all that kind of stuff. But that was just because that's the roles that were given when we're just young. But there's men that are willing to step up. My fiance is a father. Like I didn't expect that he would be so involved. I just kind of assumed most men just sit back until they get older. But no, there's so many men that want to be involved with the children, even from the youngest age, changing diapers and feeding in the middle of the night. Like that's
honestly,
amazing.
like that stuff should be standard. Like we don't say that's amazing when women do it.
Right.
Why is it amazing when men do it? Like, and I'm not like picking on your words or anything, but like this is stuff that we say that we're not even like, it doesn't even click. Like, oh, it's so amazing that he changes diapers. No, like your sperm created this, bro.
Yeah.
Like step up. Like that should be, no one praises women for that. Like I have a friend who he was like, yeah, I bring my daughter into daycare and I've got like a diaper on her head. And they're like, oh my God, you're so great for bringing her in. My wife brings her in and she doesn't have an organic diaper on. And she's there, like everyone's talking about what an awful mom she is. And I'm like, if that doesn't describe the toxic mom culture and the different standards that women have as opposed to men, I don't know what does.
Yeah. Yep.
So true. So true.
And
So
it's
not that this is like,
no, but it's a good conversation because how did women get into this situation where we're overstressed and reaching for unhealthy things because we just took all this on? And if we don't start talking about it, and we're not trying to, like we said, we're not trying to vilify men. Like we know that this was what was ingrained in them too, but we need to change the mindset of everybody with, in a way that it's balanced so that we're talking about these things like it is normal for, oh yeah, dad does this and that and that. Yeah, like that's normal. That's what it should be, but we can't do that if we're not talking about it.
Yes.
Yeah. And in our work, people come to us because they want to change their relationship with alcohol, and it turns into a bigger conversation, right? It's not about necessarily the alcohol, but like what's going on in life.
Correct.
Right. And so being able to, facilitate this safe place to come and have these conversations about what's really going on is like our big dream. It's like, it takes a village to do all of this, but like, where's our village? So like changing the narrative of like, let's help raise each other up. And that's really what we want to do here is like give you information so that you can make informed decisions about your life and better your life, right?
And share that knowledge with other women without being judged. Like that's the thing too. Like we're afraid to share, some of us, because we don't want to be judged. And then and you're in this competition mindset all the time of like trying to be a better mom. And so we want to like, it's like we, instead of a village, we built all these walls and shuttered everything so that we're separate, but we want to break that down and start supporting each other.
Yeah. So true.
And so as we look at different ways to fill ourselves up when we're not reaching for external dopamine, right? What are some tools that practical, accessible tools that we can implement into our lives to start, either reducing stress or completing the stress cycle, right? Because stress isn't all bad either. Like we
Correct.
need.
Yes, you need cortisol. But cortisol gets vilified, but without it, you die. I don't
Maybe
know another way to spin that.
maybe I think tell me if this sounds right from your experience, but it seems like the first thing that gets in our way is noticing that stress, like before it gets to level 10.
Well, because
like,
people are too overwhelmed, and so many people are disembodied, right? They don't, you ask them, what do you feel in your body when you experience stress? And they're like, oh, they literally have no idea. Like they're so disconnected. So it's like, I think the larger question that you're asking here is like the practical, tactical coping things. Like, what do we do? Number one, I think that question is really asking, like, how do we connect with ourselves? Like, how do we actually become embodied instead of disembodied? So number one is, and I'm a fan of wearables. I have an Aura ring, I have a Garmin watch, but I use them for trends, and I don't use them to dictate my life. So I think that like when people have these external tools, they use them as like the tool, not like part of the toolbox, right? So like when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, okay, like how do I actually feel today? And it's like that's a that's a free thing you can do. Like, how do I actually feel today? And starting to think about that. Yoga is great. I always tell people it took me 10 years to fall in love with yoga, but I practice very, very regularly now. Because you cannot yoga is just linking breath with movement. You cannot link breath with movement and have 1,000 different thoughts going on. You have to feel your body. And I think that's what makes it really difficult for people. So, I mean, yoga costs something, right? So that's not free. There are some free ways that you can do it. I don't love online yoga, so I hate telling people like just do yoga at home when I hate it. Listen, if it works for you, great. It just doesn't for me. Like I want to go to a studio and I want to have that communal breath, like that energy that does something for me. So I don't want to, I just hate when people are like, yeah, it's the thing. No, it's not for, at least for me. For some people, again, if it works for you, great. But there's plenty of like donation-based classes out there that you can go to for like $5. So while not free, it can be relatively inexpensive. Meditation, breath work. So the Insight Timer app is free. Breathly, listen, English is my first language, but I don't know. That app is free, like box breathing. Those are some free tools. Getting sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning. Just take 5 minutes in the morning, for the love of God. Like just take 5 minutes to see how you feel in the morning. That's the first thing I do in the morning is I lay there and I throw we have those blinds that you just like push up. I toss that up, and if the sun is up, it's up. If not, my red light's beside my bed. Again, not a free thing, but I just sit in my body. Like just sit in your body. So many people don't do that. Stop sleeping with your phone in your room. That is free 99. These are devices in your bedroom, and don't be telling me I need my alarm clock. Listen, they still sell those.
I just bought one. Yeah.
Like when people say to me, they're like, but it's my alarm clock. I go, oh, they don't sell those on Amazon anymore. Okay. I have a very straightforward approach with people. I have a large side of compassion, but when people tell me dumbass shit like that, I'm like, no, don't even with me. Like I got my like natural itch alarm clock for $30 on Amazon. Like again, it costs money. I recognize that, but if you can pay for an iPhone, you can probably pay for a $30 alarm clock.
We need people like you to call us on that stuff,
Yeah.
because and then this is nobody's fault, but we make excuses for our, like, because we want to stay where we're familiar. So somebody needs to like shake us sometimes and say, no.
Like there's a reason why Taylor Swift's song Antihero was so popular, because it's really accurate. Like you're the problem. Like you are the biggest contributor to all of your problems, and myself included. I'm not, dismissing that. So those are some coping strategies that I like. I also like to ask people on my intake form, like, what brings you joy? And so many people are just like, I don't know. They don't know. And how often are you doing it? Right? So like if you like to play pickleball, I don't know why this first thing came to my mind. How do you do? Oh, you do that once every 3 months? Great. Like that's, we can't be doing things that fill our cup once every 3 months and expecting to feel fulfilled and embodied and calm and present and all of these other things, right? Um, so I just think, what brings you joy, and do it more often.
I have a question related to that topic
Mm-hmm.
that maybe a lot of people can relate to, because I had that same thing. Like, I didn't know what brought me joy anymore. Like, I was completely out of touch with that. And then through my journey now over the years with getting rid of alcohol and finding this stuff, I am still trying to figure that out. And I keep, the messaging around work, like I need to put work away. Sometimes the work that I'm doing does bring me joy.
Yeah.
So is that my mind
Really?
like trying to convince me, or is that possible for you to
It
get?
depends.
Okay.
I mean, like I love what I do too, and I am very driven. So like I enjoy my work and I enjoy what I do. However, it depends. Like, are you using that also as another escape tool? Because I think a lot of people will spin it that way, and the only person that can answer that question is you. Like no one can answer that for another person.
That is so true. And I love that you said that, because I think that that's one of the things that I did early on is I just threw myself into work because that was where I thought all my value was. And so if I just focus on that and do that better, then I'll feel better and everything. But as I'm going through all this, I'm realizing no. So it is like just starting to learn myself and what really does bring me happy. And that starts with looking into my body, like feeling my body. And I had to remind myself to do that, which is crazy, but that's what we need to do. And then when you do, you start to be able to, and everybody's line's going to be different. So figuring it out is all it is. Like you said,
I think people overthink it too. Honestly, they're like, oh my God, joy, that's like such an extreme emotion, right? Like that's like elation, like so like beyond happy. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be like this massive thing. Like I'm sitting in front of a window right now and there's a palm tree in front of me, and the birds are using like the material to like build their nest. And like every day around like 10 or 11 o'clock, they come and they like pick off like their little pieces, and I watch them fly back to their trees to build their nest. And I love that. And that brings me joy. And like, it doesn't last. Like, I think people think joy has to like last for days or weeks, or it doesn't. It can be a quick thing. Like my boyfriend has a hummingbird. I love the hummingbirds. And so there's a hummingbird feeder out there. So every time I hear a hummingbird go by, like that brings me joy too, right? Walking my dog, snuggling with them, reading. Like traveling is a big one, but that's like a bigger one, right? So like joy doesn't just have to be the big travel adventures. It doesn't have to be like these big trips. Like it can be also the little things. And I think people dismiss that, and they don't take the time to also pay attention to that and how they feel in those moments too, because it's like, okay, how do I feel when do you even notice that you feel happy when those little things happen? So many people are so overstimulated by so many things, or they're too busy looking down at their phone that they don't take the time. They don't know it brings them joy because they don't take the time to recognize or actually even feel it, because they are so involved in something external that they're not inside themselves.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. And the more you start trying to find the things that bring you joy, those little things, the more your brain is subconsciously looking for those things. So I will start to like hear birds when I normally wouldn't have. And then it brings my attention back to the present, to those things that I find joy in. And the more that I'm doing that, the less stressed out I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how neuroplasticity works. When you make that connection and then you notice it again, it just gets stronger. Science, man.
So cool. And I think that it's important to note here, when we are using substances, that, external dopamine substances, we're really numbing our experience, right? And so we're really not able to feel that joy. And it's usually what we have found is because people are numbing the emotions that they don't want to experience, but they're all important. They're all part of being human. And when you are numbing one emotion, then you're also numbing the other emotions that you do want to feel because you can't selectively numb.
Yes. If you numb the dark, you numb the light. And going back to that client who I was talking about, I literally had never seen like that many facial expressions on her. And I spoke to her. I mean, this is not like I spoke directly to her. I was like, this is the most expressive I've ever seen you. You're smiling, you're having like more emotion, like all of these things. And so, yeah, I mean, and not to get on another topic, but like, it's like SSRIs, like people with anxiety or depression. Like if you numb the dark, you numb the light. Like those medications numb some people really bad. And they, we are meant to experience a certain range of emotions, right? Let's say, and this is like arbitrary distances, right? So, we're not meant to when we spend too much time up here, we're manic. And when we spend too much time down here, we're depressed, right? So like, we want to be more in this range, but we want to fluctuate. We don't want to stay in one area too long. But I think we've also become a society where we don't tolerate up here. It's like, okay, are you manic or are you actually having joy? Are you depressed or are you having feelings? And so many people have a feeling and they're like, oh my God, I need an antidepressant. I need Xanax. And I'm like, no, you need to actually just feel your fucking emotions. And people are so scared of feeling. And because really, truly, that drives the numbing, right? Like, and I'm not saying like every time someone has a drink that's what's happening, but when it becomes a pervasive, unhealthy coping strategy, you are dissociating from your life, you are numbing the emotions, and you're putting toxins into your body. And there's no positive way for me to spin that. And people, I do just want to touch quickly on the whole red wine thing, because I know that this comes up. Red wine became known for health, which has been totally debunked, right? Because of the resveratrol in there, which is a moderately potent antioxidant. I believe it's involved in phase 2 of liver detoxification. I always have to look at a chart. Phase 1 or phase 2 of liver detoxification, involved in our immune system and various other things. You would literally have to drink like 3 bottles of wine to get the benefit from like what you would get from 1 cup of blueberries. So like, don't at me with your red wine, ladies. Sorry, go look it up. I'm not wrong.
And then the amount of toxins you're adding to your body on top of that.
It's out of control. I mean, it's not a thing. So I just experience your life. Like experiencing your life involves experiencing the ups and the downs and everything in between. And I'm not trying to vilify people who use medication. Again, it is a tool in the toolbox. But I do think that number one, prescribers are too quick to be like, here's your antidepressant, see you later, because they have 6 to 7 minutes in a visit and they're running 2 hours behind, which is, again, a whole other problem with our medical system. But I also think that we the people are too quick to run to our doctors and say, oh my God, I need an antidepressant. I'm so stressed out. I can't handle life. Like, can you not handle life? Or are you just literally so overstimulated and reaching for all of the like things that are harming you? And that's actually the problem. Like, you're the problem, it's you kind of thing. Again, we're all our biggest problem. Taylor Swift hit the nail on the head with that. So
we love kind of the saying of, it's not your fault, right? It's not your fault because this is what we were sold, right? This is what was passed on to us. This is what we were made to believe. But it is your responsibility to take action because this is your life.
Yeah, I always say like, your trauma is not your fault, but it is your responsibility what you do with it. Just because you were hurt doesn't mean you have the right to hurt other people. Just because you were taught that alcohol was okay to use as a coping mechanism doesn't mean it is. Like, so many people have lost touch with independent thought. And even just like being able to take a moment and pause and think like, like, should I do this thing? Should I take this medication? Is this the right thing for me? Like, we want that, the Garmin watch, the Oura ring to tell us what to do, the doctor, the therapist, this. It's like your friends, like all of that. I'm not saying none of that stuff is important, but like, we as practitioners and external sources should not be the dictator of your lives. We should be a facilitator. And that's the same thing with tools, with your friends, with your partner, with whoever or whatever that external thing is. Like, it should be something that you take in and consider, but not like the holy gospel truth or the law, right? Like, and that's where I think so many people get into problems, is they just are not asking themselves, like, what do I actually need and what do I actually want?
That's why I love coaching, because we're not trying to give advice. I didn't even know coaching existed before I started doing this. And therapy, I did therapy when I was very young, but I love that coaching is about helping the person find their own answers. I'm not giving you any answers. I'm helping you find your own answers. And what so many people that we talk to are so like, we're addicted to getting that external validation. Like, I need to make sure this is okay before I do it, before we even check in with our own selves and see if it feels right.
Yep. That on.
I love this of building our own toolbox, right? And our toolbox is not going to look like our best friends and our neighbors and our partners, right? Because we're different and we're unique. But what we're doing here is being able to give our audience different ways to start exploring and adding to their toolbox, right? Of, oh, I really didn't think about giving myself 5 minutes in the morning to check out the sun and just having quiet. I'm going to check that out and see how that feels, right? It's leading with this curiosity mindset, not saying, well, Danielle said that I had to do it, so I'm going to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so a perfect example of that, like cold plunging, right? Like it's all the craze. So I talked about this in my newsletter last week. Like I had been going to a recovery spa with a friend of mine, and I also randomly had been wearing a continuous glucose monitor at the same time. Not something I normally do all the time. Again, it's information. It's not, I don't do it all the time. I don't want people to think I continue. I'm a diabetic. I'm someone who's not diabetic who wears a CGM all the time. Not the case. And my glucose plummeted to 50 when I got in that cold plunge. And for people who don't know, that's really low. And I could not regulate my glucose the rest of the day. It was all over the place. So like, just because your favorite influence, and there are actually a lot of women's health experts starting to talk about how cold plunging is actually not great for women. Stacey Sims being one of them. She's really known for women are not tiny men. And I'm not someone who's like women are delicate flowers and they can't do the same things that men do. Like that's just not my belief. However, I started to think about it in terms of intermittent fasting, which like intermittent fasting is not great for reproductive age women. And I'm like, could cold plunging be the same? So I went back the next week, same thing happened. And I'm like, okay, is it the dose? So now I'm going to maybe experiment with the dose. Stacey Sims says it's the temperature. She says 58 degrees, no colder for women. And I'm like, that's really interesting. And I experienced it. And again, end study of one, I am very committed to the scientific method. So I'm going to kind of try like different doses and see what happens. But that is like, just because I'm bringing up Andrew Huberman again. Huberman says that you should be cold plunging, or your favorite influencer who takes a cold shower every day. Like it really might not be great for women. So like, if you feel like your energy is crashing after you cold plunge, like it's probably not great for you. So like so many people will override that. Like I was like, this isn't right. And it was so great that I had the data to show it to me in that moment too, where it's like, yeah, your blood sugar is kind of fucked right now. Like, and you can't, and I couldn't regulate it the rest of the night. I went in at 2:00 and the rest of the night and all through the middle of the night, that's not how it should look. So.
And so people don't have to be an expert in scientific and all this to be able to tell this stuff for your body. So, I mean, if you want to talk about like the just the things that we feel, and then being curious about it, paying attention to our bodies and experimenting too. Like pay attention. Your doctor prescribed a medicine for something that, okay, if you want to see if it works, but read into it, do the research. If you decide you want to try it, pay attention to how it makes you feel, because people don't even know the side effects. What I was taking medication and I don't even know what's causing what. So I have to get curious.
When I would, if and when I ever started anybody on medications, when I was working conventional medicine, I told them, pay attention to how you feel. And I want you to tell at least one person who is close to you that you're starting this medication, and ask them to notice if they notice differences in you. Medications, perfect timing for the Washington Post article that came out that said, misinformation about birth control, that it doesn't cause like low libido and depression and anxiety. And I'm like, really? Because there's a lot of scientific studies out there and hundreds of thousands of women saying that it does. whole other case in point, but like, that's the same thing where like doctors are not telling women, hey, this could make you feel, even SSRIs, which are a big major class of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, there's a black box warning for suicide on there. And that was one thing that I always made sure to tell people. Most practitioners do not. They're like, here's your SSRI, you might have some dry mouth, bye. And it's like, you need to pay. Same thing goes, I have people who are very, very sensitive to supplements. And I'm like, okay, like, let's start these low and slow. And if you don't feel right, let me know, we'll try something different. But like, there's also like, why don't women pay attention to how they feel with that, right? Because when they go to their doctors and they say they have this side effect, they're like, oh no, it can't cause that. So they're gaslit. It's it's a whole other thing. So we're being taught from people in authority spaces, right? Physicians, practitioners who, my boyfriend always says like they have automatic like trust, like higher levels of trust with society. And they're telling you there's nothing wrong with you. And they're telling you it's in your head. And it's like, wait a second. So then we start to question ourselves, and that also creates more space from ourselves and creates that disembodiment. So screwed up.
And then there's like the belief, well, there must be something really wrong with me. If I'm experiencing these, it's me. I'm broken. I'm right. And
Yes.
and that starts a whole other cycle of shit.
Yes. You are not the problem with that. It's not you.
That's another
it is in fact the
example
external
of not being our fault, but the only person that's going to save us is ourselves. So that's where we're going to have to take responsibility.
Yes. I'm very pro radical responsibility. So.
Well, Danielle, I wish that we could talk to you all day and get into all of these paths that we wanted to veer off to, but I think that I am just going to have to take all of your courses that you have on your website. They just like, I don't even know. It's just like, it's so basic and fundamental, a lot of it, but that is not taught to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you are giving a free gift for your menstrual cycle one-on-one course.
101. Yeah, no, it's not one-on-one work with me. I don't want people to be confused.
101.
Yeah, you're good. But yeah, free for anybody. I think, what did I say, through April? I think
Through April. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we're going to provide that link and code for the audience. And because we were really talking about, well, we're not even paying attention. We don't even know about our cycle and how we should be paying attention to it. I don't remember the last time I had my period. Like, I wait for my best friend or my sister to tell me because they notice a mood shift or they started theirs and I'm tracking with them, right? I'm not paying attention to this. And this is another way that we're disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies, because we need different things at different stages as women, right? And I really admire that you are testing out the cold plunge, and I hope that everybody joins your newsletter so that we can hear
free info,
what your results are. I'm very curious to find out.
I will share.
Okay, and where else can people
find that you talked about how you are getting curious and doing this, because then when people listen to what you share, what you're learning, they know that it's not just because you read an article that said, or you learned it in college, like you're actually trying this stuff out. I love that.
Yeah, I will never ask someone else to do something or suggest something to someone that I'm unwilling to do myself or haven't already done. It's not fair.
Amazing.
You're living it. Okay, where can people follow you, Danielle?
Yeah, so I have a podcast. It's called Strong and Unfiltered. That's once I give away that there's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of free information because I have 165 episodes. I have really amazing people who have been on my podcast, including Carrie Jones and Nicole Jarnum, Jolene Brighton, like lots of very intelligent people. Some of it is just me and my best friend shooting the shit, and there's still free information in those episodes too. But that's a really good source. I hang out mostly on Instagram. I'm just at Danielle.Kepics, Kepics. I have all kinds of master classes in addition to the Menstrual Cycle 101. There's probably, I think, 14 or 15 master classes for $19, guides, ebooks. You can find on empoweredmindbody.co. .co. So that's a low cost way to get started. I have a team. We do emotional wellness services. Myself and my other practitioner, Ashley, do like integrative health coaching with individuals. So labs, functional testing, looking at your lifestyle. I'm booking out, I mean, I don't know when this is going to air, but I'm booking out almost in June right now. She's got about a month wait. So if you are looking to get started, you can do that all through the website, schedule consults, etc. Yeah, that's a whole mouthful. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much, and we will include all of that in the notes too, so it's easy for people to click on.
yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you
for
so
your
much.
time. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
of course.